The council chamber smelled of old wood and dying embers. I stood at the far edge of the room, my blonde hair tucked behind my ears, trying to make myself smaller than I already felt. 23 years old and still treated like a child who'd wandered into places she didn't belong. The Alpha Council didn't look at me. They never did. I was Elena Thorne, daughter of a beta who'd died protecting the northern border, raised by an aunt who reminded me daily that I should be grateful for scraps. No wolf, no shift, no mate bond singing in my blood like it did for everyone else, just a heartbeat that refused to quit, and a stubborn belief that I had something to offer, even if I couldn't name it. "The king is dying," Elder Micah announced, his voice cutting through the murmurs like a blade through silk. "Cancer. Human disease. The physicians give him 3 months. Maybe 4. The room erupted. Voices overlapped, panic threading through every syllable. King Ronan Ashford had ruled the 5 territories for 15 years, ever since he'd taken the throne at 25 after his father's assassination. He was brutal when needed, fair when possible, and utterly alone. No queen, no heir, no anchor to keep the territories from tearing themselves apart the moment his heart stopped beating. I pressed myself against the cold stone wall, watching the chaos unfold. My father had spoken of Ronan once, years ago, before a rogue attack stole his voice forever. The boy who became king too soon. He'd whispered, eyes distant. He carries ghosts no crown can silence. I'd been 7. I hadn't understood. Now, at 23, standing in a room full of wolves who could break me without effort, I thought I understood loneliness, the kind that hollowed you out from the inside. "He's requested a private audience," Micah continued, waiting for silence. His eyes, cold, calculating, finally landed on me. With Elena Thorne, the air left my lungs, every head turned. 30 pairs of eyes, glowing with wolf light, fixed on the girl who didn't belong. I felt their judgment like hands around my throat. Questions rippled through the crowd, bitter and sharp. Why her? She's not even Pack. This is madness. My hands trembled. I clasped them together, forcing my spine straight. Whatever this was, humiliation, mistake, cruel joke, I wouldn't give them the satisfaction of seeing me break. Micah's expression revealed nothing. "You're to present yourself at the king's private quarters at sunset. Don't be late." The walk through the palace felt like drowning in slow motion. Corridors stretched endlessly, lit by chandeliers that threw shadows across tapestries depicting battles I'd only read about in books. Wolves in their prime, tearing through enemies, claiming territory with blood and dominance. I'd grown up on the edges of this world, never quite part of it, never quite separate enough to escape. My reflection caught in a gilded mirror, pale hair falling in waves past my shoulders, blue eyes too wide, too uncertain. A simple gray dress that marked me as what I was, someone forgettable, except a dying king had asked for me by name. The guards outside Ronan's quarters were stone-faced, but I caught the flicker of confusion when they opened the doors. They didn't understand this either. The room beyond stole my breath. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the western forest, where sunset painted the sky in shades of amber and blood. The space was surprisingly sparse. A desk covered in maps and reports, bookshelves crammed with histories and treaties, a single chair by the fireplace. No luxury, no excess, just the bones of a man who'd forgotten how to live for anything but duty. And there, standing with his back to me, silhouetted against the dying light, was Ronan Ashford. I'd seen him before, of course, at formal gatherings, during territorial inspections, always surrounded by advisors and warriors. But I'd never been this close, never felt the weight of his presence pressing against my skin like a physical thing. He turned. The rumors hadn't prepared me. Ronan was tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair that fell just past his collar, and eyes the color of storm clouds. Handsome in a way that felt dangerous, like looking at something wild that might bolt or attack depending on the angle of approach. But it was the exhaustion that struck me hardest, etched into every line of his face, carved into the set of his shoulders. This wasn't just a man dying of disease. This was someone who'd been dying by inches for years. Elena Thorne. His voice was rough velvet, surprisingly gentle for someone who commanded armies. "Thank you for coming." I managed a curtsy, muscle memory from years of trying to fit in. "Your Majesty." "Sit, please." He gestured to the chair across from his desk, waiting until I settled before taking his own seat. The formality felt strange, wrong somehow. Silence stretched between us. I counted my heartbeats. 10, 15, 20, before he spoke again. "I'm dying." Blunt. Matter of fact. The council just learned today, but I've known for 6 months. Aggressive, inoperable, the kind of irony that would be funny if it weren't so pathetic. An alpha king taken down by cells that forgot how to die properly. I didn't know what to say. Condolences felt hollow. Questions felt intrusive. "I need an heir," he continued, eyes fixed on something beyond the window. "Without one, the territories will fracture. The families will fight for power. Thousands will die in the chaos." He paused, jaw tight. "I won't let my death destroy everything my father built. Everything I've bled to protect." My throat felt too tight. "I don't understand why you called me here." "Because I'm going to ask you to do something impossible." Now he looked at me, really looked, and I felt pinned beneath that gaze like a butterfly on a board. "Marry me, Elena. Become my queen. When I die, inherit everything. The crown, the territories, the power to hold them together." The world tilted. I gripped the armrest to keep from falling, even though I was already sitting. You can't be serious. I've never been more serious about anything in my life. But I gestured helplessly at myself. "I'm nobody. I can't shift. I don't have a pack. The families would never accept. The families will accept what I command them to accept." Steel entered his voice, the Alpha King surfacing beneath the dying man. "And you're not nobody. You're exactly what I need. Why?" The word came out broken. "Why me?" Ronan stood, moving to the window. Twilight deepened around him, turning his silhouette into something carved from shadow. When he spoke again, his voice carried a weight that made my chest ache. "Because you know what it means to be invisible. To fight for every scrap of belonging. To survive in a world that tells you every day that you don't matter." He turned back to me, and I saw something raw in his expression. Something that recognized itself in me. The next ruler can't be someone who inherited power. It has to be someone who understands what it costs when power fails the powerless. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. "You have 3 days to decide," he said quietly. "I know it's not enough time. I know I'm asking you to trade your life for a crown that will crush you. But I'm asking anyway, because I'm desperate and dying, and you're the only person in this entire cursed kingdom I trust to care about the people more than the power." He moved toward the door, clearly dismissing me, but I found my voice before he could open it. "What happens if I say no?" Ronan's hand stilled on the handle. For a long moment he didn't answer. Then I die alone, like I've lived, and the territories burn, and you go back to being invisible while thousands pay the price for my failure to plan better. The door opened. I stumbled into the hallway, guards closing it behind me with a final, echoing thud. My legs barely carried me back through the palace. Servants stared, courtiers whispered, but I didn't care. I couldn't process anything beyond the impossible choice now sitting on my shoulders like a physical weight. Marry a dying king, become a queen, inherit a kingdom that would rather tear itself apart than bow to someone like me. Or walk away, let it burn, save myself from certain destruction. I made it to my small room in the servants' wing before the shaking started. Collapsed onto the narrow bed, staring at ceiling cracks I'd memorized over years of sleepless nights. My father's voice echoed from memory. "Strength isn't about power, Elena. It's about showing up when running would be easier." He'd shown up. He'd died for it. Outside my window, the moon rose full and silver. Somewhere in the forest, wolves were running, celebrating the hunt, alive in ways I'd never be. And somewhere in this palace, a king was dying alone, holding together a world that had forgotten how to be gentle. I closed my eyes. 3 days to decide. 3 days to choose between the girl I'd always been and the woman I might become. 3 days until my answer would change everything. Or nothing at all. Morning came too quickly, dragging me from restless dreams into harsh reality. I dressed in the same gray dress. I only owned 3, and the others were being mended, and made my way to the kitchens where I helped prepare meals in exchange for my room. The work was mindless, familiar. Kneading dough, chopping vegetables, stirring pots that smelled of rosemary and thyme. My hands moved while my mind spiraled. "You look like death warmed over," Sarah muttered, the head cook who'd taken pity on me years ago. She was wolf-born, but kind, a rare combination. "Didn't sleep?" "Not much." I focused on the carrots beneath my knife, precise cuts that required no thought. "Heard the king called for you." Her tone was carefully neutral, but I caught the curiosity beneath. "That true?" Everyone would know by now. Palace gossip spread faster than wildfire. "Yes." "And?" I set down the knife, meeting her eyes, "And I can't talk about it." Sarah studied me for a long moment, then nodded. "Fair enough. But Elena, whatever he asked, whatever choice you're facing, don't let fear make the decision for you. Fear's a liar. Always has been." Before I could respond, the kitchen door burst open. A young messenger boy, breathless and wide-eyed, scanned the room until he found me. "Elena Thorne? You're summoned to the council chamber, immediately." My stomach dropped. "Why?" "Didn't say." But Elder Micah looked angry. Sarah's hand found my shoulder, squeezed once. "Go, and remember what I said." The council chamber felt different in daylight, less shadowy, more exposed. 15 elders sat in a semicircle, their expressions ranging from hostile to calculating. Micah stood at the center, his gray beard bristling with barely contained fury. I stopped at the designated spot for those being questioned, hands clasped to hide their shaking. "Elena Thorne." Micah's voice could have frozen fire. "The king has informed us of his proposal, a marriage, to you." Murmurs rippled through the elders. I kept my face blank. "He claims this is his decision as sovereign," Micah continued, each word clipped. "But we have concerns, significant concerns about a human." "I'm not human," I interrupted, then immediately regretted it as his eyes flashed gold. "You might as well be. No wolf, no shift, no pack loyalty." He leaned forward, predatory. "Tell us, girl. What did you do to manipulate a dying man into this madness?" The accusation hit like a physical blow. "I didn't. Did you seduce him? Offer him some false hope of healing? What leverage do you have over our king?" "None." My voice came out sharper than intended. "I didn't ask for this. I didn't even know he knew my name until yesterday." Elder Cassandra, a silver-haired woman with eyes like chips of ice, spoke up. "Then why you? Of all the eligible females in 5 territories, powerful bloodlines, trained warriors, women who could actually rule, why would he choose someone so profoundly unsuitable?" The question wasn't meant to be answered. It was meant to cut, to remind me of my place. But something in me, some ember of the girl my father raised, refused to stay silent. "I don't know," I said quietly. "But maybe that's exactly why. Maybe he's tired of powerful bloodlines that care more about power than people. Maybe he wants someone who remembers what it's like to be powerless." The silence was deafening. Micah's face turned red. "How dare you—" "Enough." The voice came from the doorway, cutting through the tension like a blade. Ronan stood there, looking worse than yesterday, paler, thinner somehow, as if the disease was consuming him faster now that the secret was out. But his presence still commanded the room, still made every elder straighten instinctively. "Elena is here at my request, not yours," he said, moving to stand beside me. The gesture felt protective, deliberate. "If you have questions about my choice, address them to me, not to her." "Your Majesty," Cassandra began, her tone shifting to something smoother, more political. "We only wish to understand. This decision affects the entire kingdom. Surely you see how unprecedented this is." "I see that I'm dying and need an heir." Ronan's bluntness made several elders flinch. "I see that the traditional approach, Marrying for alliance, for bloodline, for power consolidation, would create immediate civil war the moment I'm gone. Every family would claim their connection gives them rights to the throne. He paused, letting that sink in. Elena has no family, no alliances, no claims, except the one I'm giving her. She threatens no one because she has nothing to threaten with. That makes her the only choice that doesn't immediately fracture everything. Micah's jaw worked. She can't shift. She can't lead warriors. She doesn't need to. Ronan's voice dropped, dangerous. That's what generals are for. What she needs to do is hold the territories together through sheer force of will and the legitimacy of my crown. And I believe she can. Based on what evidence? Cassandra challenged. Based on the fact that she's survived 23 years in a world designed to break her, and she's still standing. He looked at me then, and I saw something in his expression that made my breath catch. Respect. Recognition. That takes more strength than most of you have ever needed. The council erupted in protests, but Ronan raised his hand and they fell silent. The alpha command in the gesture was absolute. I'm not asking permission, he said flatly. I'm informing you of my decision. If Elena agrees, we'll marry within the week. The succession will be secured, and when I die, you will swear fealty to her as you did to me. That's not negotiable. He turned to leave, then paused. Elena, walk with me. I followed, feeling 30 eyes boring into my back. We walked in silence through corridors I'd cleaned 100 times, past guards who stared with barely concealed shock. Ronan led me outside, into the palace gardens where autumn flowers bloomed in defiance of the coming winter. I'm sorry, he said finally, stopping beside a fountain where water trickled over stone, for putting you through that. The council needed to hear it from me. And you needed to understand what you'd be facing. They hate me. The words came out flat, factual. They fear you. It's different. He sat on the fountain's edge, suddenly looking exhausted. Fear can be worked with. Hate is harder. I sat beside him, careful to maintain distance. Why are you really doing this? The political explanation makes sense, but there's something else. I can feel it. Ronan was quiet for so long I thought he wouldn't answer. Then, have you ever felt like you were watching your own life from outside? Like you're performing a role someone else wrote, speaking lines that don't quite fit? Every day, I whispered. I became king at 25. My father was murdered by a rival family, poisoned at a peace summit. I wasn't ready, wasn't trained properly, but I was the heir, so I put on the crown and learned to be ruthless because that's what survival required. He stared at the water, his reflection fracturing in the ripples. 15 years. 15 years of decisions that kept people alive but cost pieces of my soul. And now I'm dying, and all I can think is, what was it for? What did I build that will last beyond me? His honesty was like standing too close to fire. Painful and necessary. You built stability, I offered. Peace. The territories haven't had a major war in over a decade. Peace maintained by fear of me. The moment I'm gone, that fear dies too. He turned to face me fully. But if I can give them something else, someone who represents possibility instead of power, compassion instead of conquest, maybe that lasts longer than fear ever could. You're gambling the kingdom on A, maybe. I'm gambling on you. His gray eyes held mine, and I'm rarely wrong about people. A laugh escaped me, sharp and broken. You don't even know me. I know you stayed in a place that treated you like dirt because you had nowhere else to go. I know you work in the kitchens and don't complain. I know your father died protecting the border, and you wear his sacrifice like armor. He paused. And I know that yesterday, when I offered you everything, your first question was about what happens to others, not yourself. That tells me everything I need to know. Tears burned behind my eyes. I blinked them back furiously. I'm terrified, I admitted. Of saying yes, of saying no, of everything this means. Good. Ronan's smile was sad. Anyone who isn't terrified of power is exactly the kind of person who shouldn't have it. A bird sang somewhere in the garden, oblivious to the weight of our conversation. 3 days, I said. You gave me 3 days. I need them. Take them. He stood, offering his hand to help me up. When I took it, his palm was warm, solid, alive, despite everything. But Elena, whatever you decide, know that I see you. Really see you. You're not invisible to me. He left me there, standing beside the fountain, while the afternoon sun painted everything gold. That evening, I couldn't face the kitchens or my small room. Instead, I wandered to the palace library, a place I'd discovered years ago during sleepless nights. The librarian, an ancient wolf named Thomas, never questioned my presence. I pulled books on royal succession, territorial law, queenship. The words blurred together, but one passage caught my attention. A crown is not a gift. It is a burden willingly shouldered for those who cannot shoulder their own. The measure of a ruler is not in their power, but in their willingness to break beneath the weight, rather than let it fall on others. My father's voice echoed again. Showing up when running would be easier. I closed the book, pressing my palms against my eyes. 2 days left. 2 days to decide if I was brave enough to shoulder a crown that would almost certainly crush me. 2 days to figure out if being seen, really seen, by one dying king was worth facing the hatred of an entire kingdom. Outside the library windows, stars began to emerge, cold, distant, beautiful in their indifference. I thought about Ronan, alone in his quarters, counting down the days he had left. I thought about the territories, holding their breath, waiting for the inevitable fracture. I thought about all the invisible people like me, who'd spend their lives hoping someone in power might actually care. And I thought about the girl I'd been yesterday, invisible, safe, small. She was dying too, I realized. The question wasn't whether to let her die. It was whether I had the courage to become whoever came next. The second day found me in places I'd never dared venture before. I woke before dawn, dressed in my best dress, a deep blue that Sarah had given me last winter, and walked through the palace with purpose instead of apology. If I was going to make this decision, I needed to understand what I'd be inheriting, not the crown or the title, but the people, the real kingdom beneath the politics. The servant quarters sprawled beneath the main palace, a maze of narrow corridors and cramped rooms where those who kept the kingdom running actually lived. I knew these halls intimately, but today I saw them differently. The cracked walls that let in winter cold. The single washroom shared by 20 people. The children playing in corners because there was nowhere else for them to go. Elena? Maya, a young mother who worked in the laundry, stared at me with surprise. Her daughter Anna clung to her skirts, barely 4 years old with wide dark eyes. What are you doing here? I heard. Is it true? About the king? Word had spread faster than I'd anticipated. Of course it had. It's true, I said quietly. He asked me to marry him. Maya's hand flew to her mouth. Gods above. And you said, I haven't answered yet. I crouched down to Anna's level, smiling at the little girl who'd slowly warmed to me over shared meals. I'm trying to figure out what the right choice is. The right choice? Maya's laugh was bitter. Elena, he's offering you everything. How is that even a question? Because everything comes with a price. I stood, meeting her eyes. And I need to know if I can pay it, if I should pay it. Maya was quiet for a moment, bouncing Anna on her hip. Then, my husband died in the border wars 3 years ago. The king himself came to tell me, brought compensation, made sure Anna and I had a place here, work that would feed us. Her voice softened. He didn't have to do that. Most rulers wouldn't. But he did, because he remembers that we exist. She shifted Anna to her other hip. If you're asking me whether someone like you should be queen, someone who's lived down here with us instead of up there with them, then yes. 1,000 times yes, because maybe then someone will finally care about the cracks in our walls. Her words settled in my chest like stones. I spent the morning talking to others. The stable master who praised Ronan's fairness, but worried about the family's positioning for power. The head gardener who'd served 3 generations and feared what civil war would do to the land itself. The guards who respected their king but knew they'd be caught in the middle of any succession fight. Every conversation added weight to the choice pressing down on me. By afternoon, I found myself at the palace temple, a small stone building where a priest named Father Dominic tended the sacred flame. He was human, like the disease killing Ronan, a irony not lost on anyone. The temple was empty except for him, arranging flowers on the altar. Elena? His weathered face creased in a gentle smile. I wondered when you'd come. You heard. The whole kingdom has heard. He gestured to a bench. Sit. Tell me what troubles your heart. I sat, and the words tumbled out. The proposal, the council's hatred, the impossible weight of the decision. The fear that I was either throwing away my one chance at mattering or walking into certain destruction. Father Dominic listened without interruption, his aged hands folding flowers into arrangements as I spoke. Do you know what a crown really is? He asked when I finally ran out of words. It's not gold or jewels or power. It's a promise. A covenant between ruler and ruled that says, I will carry what you cannot. I will stand when you fall. I will break before I let you break. He placed a white lily in the center of his arrangement. King Ronan has carried that promise for 15 years. It's hollowed him out, made him into something harder than he was meant to be. But he's kept it. And now he's asking if you'll keep it after he's gone. But I don't know how, I whispered. I don't know how to rule. How to lead warriors or negotiate treaties or... None of that matters. Father Dominic's eyes were kind but firm. Those are skills that can be learned, advisors who can be consulted. What matters is whether you have the heart for it, whether you can look at suffering and choose to act instead of looking away. He touched my hand briefly. You've been looking away your whole life, Elena. Not because you don't care, but because you thought you had no power to change anything. Now someone is offering you that power. The question isn't whether you're ready, it's whether you're willing. The sacred flame flickered in its brazier, casting dancing shadows across ancient stone. I'm scared, I admitted. As you should be. Only fools walk into fire without fear. He stood, his old bones creaking. But I've watched you for years, child. Watched you show kindness when cruelty would have been easier. Watched you endure invisibility with grace. If King Ronan has chosen you, it's because he sees what I see, someone who understands that power should serve, not be served. I left the temple as the sun began its descent, Father Dominic's words echoing in my mind. That evening, a guard appeared at my door with a summons, not to the council or the throne room, but to Ronan's private quarters again. My heart hammered as I climbed those stairs, each step feeling heavier than the last. This time when I entered, Ronan was seated by the fire, papers scattered around him. He looked up, and I saw the exhaustion had deepened. The disease was moving faster than he'd told anyone. Thank you for coming, he said, gesturing to the chair across from him. I have something to show you. He pushed a leather-bound journal across the small table between us. This is a record of the territories, not the official histories or the political summaries. The real record. Villages struggling with failed crops. Families torn apart by the mate bond's cruelty when it pairs people from feuding packs. Children born without wolves who are abandoned or worse. I opened the journal, reading his handwriting, precise but occasionally shaking. Page after page of problems he'd tried to solve, people he'd tried to help, failures that clearly haunted him. I've done what I could, he said quietly, but there's so much more. So many cracks in the system that I couldn't fix because fixing them would have required challenging traditions older than my bloodline. He paused. But you could. An outsider queen with no loyalty to tradition? You could rebuild things the way they should be, not the way they've always been. Or I could be overthrown in a week, I countered, though my hands trembled as I turned the pages. Possibly. His honesty was brutal. Probably even. The families will test you. Some will try to manipulate you, others to remove you entirely. You'll face assassination attempts, political traps, betrayals from people you trust. He leaned forward. But Elena, if you survive even a year, if you manage to hold the territories together, and implement even a fraction of the changes needed, you'll have done more good than most rulers do in a lifetime. I closed the journal, meeting his eyes. Why does it have to be me? Why can't you find someone stronger, more experienced? Because strength and experience have had their chance. They've maintained the status quo, kept power in the same hands, repeated the same cycles. His voice roughened with emotion. I need someone who'll break the cycle. Someone the system hasn't corrupted yet. I'll be alone, I whispered. You'll be dead. And I'll be alone facing all of it. Something flickered across his face. Pain, regret, something deeper I couldn't name. Not entirely alone. I'm putting provisions in place. Advisors who are loyal to the crown, not the families. Guards who've sworn to protect you specifically. And... He hesitated. I'm writing letters. Dozens of them. Guidance for situations I won't be there to help you through. They'll be sealed, dated, given to you as you need them. The gesture was so unexpectedly tender that tears burned my eyes. You're putting more thought into my future than anyone ever has, I said, voice breaking. You deserve that. The words were simple, but weighted with conviction. You deserve to be seen, protected, prepared, even if I'm the only one who thinks so. We sat in silence, the fire crackling between us. Outside the windows, night had fallen completely, stars emerging like scattered diamonds against black velvet. Tomorrow is my last day to decide, I said finally. I know. If I say yes, when do we marry? 3 days after. I want you to have time to prepare, but we can't wait longer. The disease. He trailed off, but I understood. Every day mattered now. I stood, smoothing my dress with shaking hands. I need to think. One more night. Of course. Ronan stood as well, and for a moment we simply looked at each other. Two people brought together by desperation and dying light, trying to forge something meaningful from the wreckage. Elena, he said as I reached the door. Whatever you decide, thank you. For considering it. For seeing past the crown to what I'm actually asking. Not everyone would. I nodded, not trusting my voice, and fled into the corridor. That night I climbed to the palace roof. A place servants weren't supposed to go, but where I'd hidden countless times over the years. The city sprawled below, lights twinkling in windows where families gathered. The forest stretched beyond, dark and infinite, and above, the stars watched with their eternal indifference. I thought about my father, who'd given his life protecting strangers. About Sarah's kindness in a kitchen that demanded none. About Maya and Anna, trying to survive in a world that didn't care about widows and orphans. About Father Dominic's words, whether you're willing. I thought about Ronan, dying alone to save a kingdom that would forget him the moment his heart stopped. About his journal full of people he'd tried to help. About the letters he was writing to guide me through a future he wouldn't see. And I thought about the girl I'd been, invisible, careful, safe. She'd survived by being small. But survival wasn't the same as living. The wind picked up, cold and sharp, carrying the scent of pine and approaching winter. I closed my eyes, letting it wash over me, and felt something shift inside my chest. Not courage, exactly, more like clarity. I couldn't save everyone. I'd probably fail more than I succeeded. The families would fight me, the council would undermine me, and I'd make mistakes that cost lives. But if I said no, if I walked away to preserve my own safety, I'd spend the rest of my life wondering what might have been, wondering if I could have made a difference, wondering if being seen by one dying king was worth the risk of being destroyed by his kingdom. And I realized I already knew the answer. I'd always known. I just needed time to find the courage to admit it. Tomorrow, I would give Ronan my answer. Tomorrow, everything would change. Tomorrow, the invisible girl would step into the light and either burn or become something new entirely. The stars offered no judgment, no guidance. But somewhere in my chest, beneath the fear and doubt, something small and fierce whispered, "You can do this." I wasn't sure I believed it, but I was willing to try. Dawn broke cold and clear on the third day. I found Ronan in the throne room, standing before the massive chair carved from ancient oak that had seated kings for 3 centuries. He wasn't sitting, hadn't sat, I suspected, in the way rulers were supposed to. He simply stood there, one hand resting on the armrest, looking at it like a man saying goodbye to an old enemy. "I'll do it," I said from the doorway, my voice steadier than I felt. "I'll marry you." He turned, and the relief that flooded his features was so raw it made my chest ache. For a moment, he looked younger, less burdened, almost human. "You're sure?" he asked, even though we both knew I couldn't be. "Not really." "No, but I'm willing." I walked forward, my footsteps echoing in the vast empty space. "Father Dominic said that's what matters." A ghost of a smile touched Ronan's lips. "Dominic is wiser than most. He married my parents, you know. Watch me grow up. I think he's been waiting for me to do something genuinely foolish or genuinely brave. He'll be pleased it's both." I stopped a few feet away, suddenly unsure. "What happens now?" "Now I make it official." He reached into his jacket and withdrew a small velvet box. Inside sat a ring, not the ornate crown jewels I'd expected, but something simpler. A silver band inlaid with a single dark stone that seemed to shift colors in the light. This was my mother's. She wore it every day, even after becoming queen, because my father gave it to her before he had anything to offer but himself. He took my hand, his palm warm, calloused, and slid the ring onto my finger. It fit perfectly, which seemed impossible, as if it had been waiting. "In 3 days we marry," Ronan said quietly, still holding my hand. "The ceremony will be private, just us, Father Dominic, and necessary witnesses. No spectacle. I won't put you through that." He paused. "After, we have perhaps 2 months, maybe 3 if I'm fortunate. In that time, I'll teach you everything I can, introduce you to allies, show you the territories, and when I die, you'll take this throne and hold it against everyone who wants to tear it from you." Put like that, it sounded impossible, but I'd already said yes. "The council will fight this," I said. "They've already started." His expression darkened. "Micah is petitioning the High Court to declare me mentally unfit due to the disease. Cassandra is suggesting the marriage violates succession law. Others are making threats more subtle but no less dangerous." Fear spiked through me. Can they stop it? No. The king's word on succession is absolute. It's the one power that can't be challenged while I live, but they can make your life hell after I'm gone. He released my hand, moving to the window where morning light poured across the city, which is why we need to be strategic. "I'm not just giving you a crown, Elena. I'm giving you weapons." Over the next hour, he outlined his plan. Loyalists placed in key positions. Financial reserves hidden from the council's reach. Treaties with neighboring territories that would hold regardless of internal politics. Letters of recommendation to allies who would support me even after his death. "You've been planning this for months," I realized. Since the diagnosis, I knew I needed an heir, but I also knew the traditional approach would fail. "So, I've been preparing for someone like you." He looked at me directly. "Someone the system would reject. Someone who'd need every advantage just to survive." "Did you always know it would be me?" "No. I considered others. But then I saw you in the gardens one day, sitting with the children from the servant quarters, telling them stories. You made them laugh, made them forget for a moment how hard their lives were." His voice softened. "And I thought, that's what a ruler should do. Not command fear or demand respect, but make people's burdens lighter, even in small ways." The memory surfaced. I'd been reading to Anna and the other children, silly tales about brave mice and foolish cats. I hadn't known anyone was watching. "You've been watching me," I said, uncertain how to feel about that. "I watch everyone. It's the job." He smiled faintly. "But yes, I paid particular attention to you, to how you moved through the palace like you were apologizing for existing, yet never compromised your kindness. That combination is rare, precious." A knock interrupted us. A guard entered, bowing low. "Your Majesty, the council demands an audience. Elder Micah says it's urgent." Ronan's expression hardened. "Tell them I'll see them this afternoon, and that Elena will be joining me." The guard's eyes widened fractionally, but he bowed again and retreated. "They'll try to intimidate you," Ronan warned. "Make you doubt. Maybe threaten you directly. Can you face that?" I thought about Maya and Anna, about the journal full of people who needed help, about Father Dominic's question, whether you're willing. "I can face it," I said. "I might not win, but I can face it. That's all I ask." The council chamber at midday was a different beast than at dawn or dusk. Sunlight poured through high windows, leaving nowhere to hide. All 15 elders sat in their formal robes, faces carved from stone and judgment. I entered beside Ronan, wearing the same blue dress, but with my mother's ring catching the light. Let them see it. Let them understand this was real. Micah stood immediately. Your Majesty, this charade has gone far enough. We formally request you reconsider this arrangement. For the good of the kingdom. Request denied, Ronan said flatly, taking his seat. He gestured for me to sit beside him, in the chair reserved for the queen consort. The symbolism wasn't lost on anyone. Cassandra leaned forward. You're condemning us to chaos. She has no training, no bloodline, no connection to the pack structure that holds the territories together. The moment you die, we fracture. The moment I die, you'll have a legitimate ruler with my full authority behind her, Ronan countered. What you do with that is your choice. Fall in line and maintain stability, or fracture yourselves through prideful stupidity, but don't blame Elena for failures that would be entirely yours. Elder Marcus, a broad-shouldered man who commanded the Eastern Territories, spoke up. His voice was measured, less hostile. Your Majesty, we understand your reasoning, truly. But Miss Thorne has no experience with territorial disputes, resource allocation, military strategy. How can she possibly? She'll learn. Ronan's certainty was absolute. The same way I learned. Through doing, through failing, through getting back up and trying again. And she'll have advisors, including all of you, if you choose to serve rather than sabotage. We're not questioning her character, Marcus continued, though several elders looked like they wanted to interrupt. We're questioning the practicality. The families won't accept her. They'll see weakness and exploit it. Then they'll underestimate her. Ronan glanced at me. Which is the biggest mistake they can make. Micah slammed his hand on the armrest. This is insanity. You're gambling everything on a girl who can't even shift. She's barely better than human. Enough. The alpha command in Ronan's voice made every wolf in the room flinch, their instincts bowing even as their minds rebelled. You will speak of your future queen with respect, or you will leave this council permanently. Choose. Silence fell like a hammer. I found my voice, surprising myself. May I speak? Every eye turned to me. The weight of their attention felt like drowning, but I forced myself to breathe through it. You're right, I said, looking at each elder in turn. I have no training, no bloodline, no wolf to prove my worth by your standards. Everything you're afraid of is valid. Micah's expression turned smug, but I wasn't finished. But I'm also not trying to be what you expect. King Ronan isn't choosing me to maintain your systems. He's choosing me to survive despite them. And maybe that's what the territories actually need. Someone who doesn't know the traditional way things are done, so she's free to find better ways. I stood, channeling every ounce of courage I possessed. I'm not asking you to like me. I'm not even asking you to trust me. I'm asking you to do your jobs, to serve the kingdom instead of your own ambitions. And if you can't do that, then yes, we'll fracture. But it won't be because of me. It'll be because you chose pride over duty. The silence that followed was different, thoughtful. Even Micah seemed momentarily stunned. Elder Victoria, who'd been quiet until now, tilted her head. She was ancient, older than anyone on the council, with silver hair and eyes that missed nothing. You have fire, she said slowly. Hidden. But there. Perhaps that's enough. It isn't, Cassandra argued. Fire without control just burns everything. Better fire than ice, Victoria countered. We've had cold rulers before. They maintained order but forgot warmth. Maybe warmth is what we need. The council erupted in debate. Voices overlapped, arguments building and collapsing. But I noticed something. The tone had shifted. Not to acceptance, not yet. But to consideration. Possibility. Ronan caught my eye and nodded once. Approval. When the council finally quieted, Micah stood again. His expression was sour, defeated. We cannot stop this marriage, but we will be watching, Miss Thorne. Every decision, every action, and the moment you prove unfit, we will act. I would expect nothing less, I replied, channeling a calm I didn't feel. The council was dismissed. Elders filed out, some casting curious glances, others openly hostile. But they left. The first battle, if not won, at least survived. That evening, Ronan took me to the palace archives, a vast underground chamber where centuries of records were kept. We walked through rows of shelves lit by mage light, our footsteps echoing. "This is the kingdom's memory," he said, running his hand along ancient spines, treaties, territorial agreements, bloodline records, everything that holds us together. "You'll need to know it. Not all of it, but enough to understand what you're protecting." He pulled down a leather tome, opening it to reveal maps of the 5 territories. His finger traced borders. The Northern Reach, ruled by House Fenwick, militaristic, honorable, suspicious of outsiders. The Eastern Vale, House Cordova, merchants, pragmatists, motivated by profit. The Southern Cross, House Blackthorn, old blood, traditional, they'll be your biggest opposition. The Western Peaks, House Silvermane, mystics, healers, they value wisdom over power. And the Central Heartlands, the Crown's direct territory. Each name, each house carried weight, history, expectation. "How do I unite them?" I asked. "You don't. Not at first." He closed the book. "You survive them, learn their languages, their priorities, give them no excuse to unite against you, and slowly, very slowly, you show them that you're the stability they need." We spent hours there, Ronan teaching me the foundations. Not everything. There wasn't time for everything, but the essential framework, who could be trusted, who couldn't, where the real power lay beneath the official hierarchies. Finally, exhausted, we emerged into the night. Stars scattered overhead, the same stars I'd watched from the roof just days ago. "Thank you," I said quietly, "for all of this, for seeing me." Ronan stopped, turning to face me fully. In the moonlight, his features seemed softer. Less like the harsh king, more like the man he might have been without the crown. "Elena," he said, voice rough with something I couldn't name, "I need to tell you something. Before the wedding. Before it's too late to walk away." My heart stuttered. "What?" He took a breath, and I saw vulnerability flash across his face. Real, deep, terrifying vulnerability. This started as strategy, a practical solution to succession. But somewhere over the past 3 days, watching you choose courage over safety, watching you stand before the council with nothing but conviction. He paused, jaw tight. It became something else, something I have no right to feel when I'm dying, and you're agreeing to this impossible situation. "Ronan, I'm falling for you," he said, the words wrenched from somewhere deep. "Not the idea of you, not the political convenience, you. The woman who reads to children and faces elders without flinching and somehow still believes the world can be better." His hands clenched. "And it's selfish and cruel because I'm asking you to marry me, to take on everything I'm leaving behind. And now I'm admitting that my feelings are compromised. That I want..." I kissed him. It wasn't planned, wasn't thought through. I simply stepped forward and pressed my lips to his, cutting off the torrent of words. He froze for a heartbeat, then kissed me back, gentle, desperate, like someone discovering something precious they'll never get to keep. When we broke apart, both breathing hard, I rested my forehead against his. "I'm falling too," I whispered. "I didn't want to admit it because it makes everything harder, but I am. And maybe that's okay. Maybe that's what makes this bearable. Doing something impossible for someone who sees me as more than a strategy." Ronan's arms came around me, holding me close. I felt his heart beating against my cheek, strong despite the disease eating him from within. 2 months, he said into my hair. Maybe 3. That's all we get. Then we make them count. We stood there beneath the stars, 2 people brought together by desperation and dying light, holding each other while the kingdom slept around us. In 3 days, I would marry a king. In 3 months, I would bury him. But tonight we had this, and for now, that was enough. The wedding took place at dawn on a Tuesday, in the small temple where Father Dominic tended the sacred flame. I wore a simple white dress that Sarah had stayed up all night altering, one of the Queen's old gowns, pulled from storage and modified to fit my smaller frame. My blonde hair fell loose down my back, woven with autumn flowers that Maya had gathered from the palace gardens. No crown, no jewels. Just me, trembling and determined, walking toward a future I couldn't predict. Ronan waited at the altar in formal black, his dark hair combed back, looking more like the king from official portraits than the exhausted man I'd come to know. But when I reached him and saw his eyes, storm gray and achingly gentle, I recognized him completely. Father Dominic smiled at us both. Rarely have I married two people more aware of what they're undertaking. This is not a union of convenience or tradition. This is a covenant forged in courage and crisis. He raised his hands. Do you, Ronan Ashford, King of the 5 territories, take Elena Thorne as your wife, your queen, your legacy? I do. Ronan's voice was steady, absolute. And do you, Elena Thorne, take Ronan Ashford as your husband, accepting all the burdens and blessings this union brings? I met Ronan's gaze, saw the question there, the last chance to run, but I also saw hope, trust, something that looked dangerously like love. The sacred flame flared brighter as Father Dominic bound our hands with a silver cord. Then, by the authority vested in me and witnessed by the divine, I pronounce you husband and wife. May your union bring peace to those who need it most. Ronan kissed me softly, a promise sealed in the presence of the few witnesses who'd been required. Victoria from the council, Marcus who'd shown the least hostility, and 2 guards sworn to absolute loyalty. When we parted, I was a queen. The world didn't feel different, but I was. The announcement went out by midday. Town criers in every territory proclaimed the marriage, the succession secured. Reactions varied wildly. In the central heartlands, people seemed cautiously hopeful. The servants I'd worked beside celebrated quietly, as if afraid to hope too loudly. Maya brought Anna to see me, the little girl's eyes wide as she whispered, "You're a queen now?" "I am," I said, kneeling so we were eye level. "But I'm still the same person who read you stories. That won't change." In the Southern Cross, House Blackthorn sent a formal letter of congratulations so cold, it might as well have been a declaration of war. The Northern Reach and Eastern Vale were cautiously neutral, waiting to see how things played out. Only the Western Peaks, through House Silvermane, sent genuine warmth, a letter from their matriarch welcoming me and offering guidance. The council was divided. Victoria had shifted to open support, arguing that stability required unity regardless of personal feelings. Marcus remained pragmatic but fair. Cassandra and Micah, however, grew more hostile by the day, making their disapproval known in every meeting. But I had little time to worry about politics. Ronan had promised to teach me everything in the time remaining, and he kept that promise with fierce determination. We spent the first week traveling the territories together. The Northern Reach was harsh, beautiful, mountains carved by wind and time, fortresses built to withstand sieges. Lord Fenwick, a gray-haired warrior with scars mapping his face, met us with military precision. He was respectful to Ronan, but barely acknowledged me. "Can she fight?" he asked bluntly during dinner. "She doesn't need to," Ronan replied. "That's why she has generals. A ruler who can't defend herself is a liability." Fenwick's eyes, cold blue, assessed me like a potentially defective weapon. I set down my fork carefully. "Lord Fenwick, I understand your concern, but strength takes many forms. I may not win a physical battle, but I can learn strategy, logistics, morale. I can make sure your warriors are equipped, fed, and honored for their service. Isn't that also defense?" He studied me for a long moment. Then, unexpectedly, "Perhaps. We'll see if you survive long enough to prove it." It wasn't acceptance. But it wasn't rejection either. The Eastern Vale was different. Bustling markets, trade routes, wealth flowing through cities built on commerce. Lady Cordova was sharp-eyed and calculating, more interested in economic projections than bloodlines. "Tell me, Your Majesty," she said, the title new and strange on her tongue. "What's your position on the tariffs between territories?" I didn't know. But Ronan had prepared me for this. "I believe in fair trade that benefits all territories equally. If current tariffs create imbalance, I'm open to renegotiation. A diplomatic answer. Cordova smiled thinly, but in practice, fairness is complicated. The Southern Cross produces grain we all need. Should they not profit from that necessity? They should profit fairly, I countered, remembering Ronan's lessons, but not exploitatively. Necessity shouldn't become extortion. Cordova's smile widened. You have a spine. Good. You'll need it. The western peaks welcomed us with ritual and reverence. Matriarch Silvermane was ancient, her silver hair falling to her waist, her presence radiating quiet power. She greeted me not as a curiosity but as an equal. The spirits whispered of your coming, she said, taking my hands. Her skin was papery soft, her grip surprisingly strong. A queen born from invisibility, rising when the old powers fail. You carry potential, child. Whether you fulfill it is your choice. I'm trying, I whispered. That's all anyone can do. She pressed something into my palm. A small stone carved with symbols I didn't recognize. For protection. The road ahead will test you in ways you cannot imagine, but you are not as alone as you think. The Southern Cross refused our visit entirely. Lord Blackthorn sent a terse message. When the true succession is settled, we will discuss the kingdom's future, not before. It stung. But Ronan had expected it. They'll come around or they won't, he said as we traveled back to the Central Heartlands. Your job isn't to make them love you. It's to make rebellion more costly than cooperation. 6 weeks into the marriage, Ronan collapsed. We'd been in his study, reviewing trade agreements, when he simply stopped mid-sentence. His face went gray. The papers slipped from his hands. Ronan. I caught him as he swayed, lowering him to the floor. His skin was ice cold, sweat beading on his forehead. I'm fine, he gasped, but we both knew he wasn't. The physicians came immediately. Their diagnosis was grim. The disease was accelerating. Weeks, they said. Maybe a month. Not the 2 or 3 we'd hoped for. That night, I sat beside Ronan's bed in the royal chambers we now shared. He was sleeping, finally, after hours of pain they'd barely managed to control. I held his hand, memorizing the calluses, the strength still present despite everything. I'm not ready, I whispered to the darkness. I'm not ready to lose you. I'm not ready to do this alone, but ready or not, time was running out. The next few weeks were a blur of compressed education. Ronan pushed himself relentlessly, determined to transfer everything he could before the end. We spent hours on treaties, territorial law, military structure. He introduced me to his most trusted advisors, General Hayes, who commanded the Crown's armies, Lady Sinclair, who managed the kingdom's finances, and Master Garrett, the spy master who knew every secret worth knowing. Protect her, Ronan commanded them all. When I'm gone, she'll be vulnerable. Your loyalty to me must transfer to her, or everything falls apart. They swore. Some enthusiastically, others with visible reluctance, but they swore. Ronan also began giving me the letters he'd written, sealed envelopes marked for specific situations. When you face your first territorial dispute, open this one. When someone challenges your authority directly, this one. When you feel completely alone, this one. Dozens of letters, his voice reaching beyond death. You're giving me pieces of you, I said, tears streaming down my face as he pressed another envelope into my hands. I'm giving you what I can. He was barely eating now, his body consuming itself, but his mind remained sharp. I wish I had more time, more answers, more certainty to offer, but this is what we have. I climbed into bed beside him, careful of his frail frame, and held him close. Tell me something true, I whispered. Something you've never told anyone. He was quiet for so long I thought he'd fallen asleep. Then, I used to dream about disappearing. Just walking away from the crown, the responsibility, all of it. Becoming someone anonymous who could sleep without nightmares. His breath was warm against my hair. But then I met you, and for the first time in 15 years, I wanted to stay. Wanted more time. Wanted to see what kind of queen you'd become. I'm terrified I'll fail you. You won't. His certainty was absolute. You might fail yourself, or the kingdom, or specific situations, but you won't fail me, because I'm not asking for perfection. I'm asking for effort, for compassion, for you to keep trying even when it's impossible. He kissed my forehead. That's all any of us can do. Ronan died on a cold morning in late November, 2 months and 3 days after our wedding. I was beside him when it happened. His breathing had been labored for days, his consciousness fading in and out. But that morning, he opened his eyes one last time and found me. "Elena," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "I'm here." I held his hand, tears streaming. "You were the best decision I ever made." Each word was an effort. "Be brave. Be kind. Don't let them make you hard." "I won't, I promise." He smiled, small, peaceful. "Good, that's good." His eyes closed, his breathing slowed, and then, gently like someone finally allowed to rest, he stopped. King Ronan Ashford was gone, and I was alone. The funeral was a week later, a grand affair that the entire kingdom attended. They came from all 5 territories, nobles and commoners, supporters and enemies, all gathering to witness the end of an era. I stood beside the pyre in the formal black robes of mourning, watching as flames consumed the man I'd barely had time to love. Father Dominic led the ceremony, his voice steady despite his own grief. The council stood behind me, the families watched from their designated areas, and somewhere in the crowd, ordinary people mourned a king who'd tried, despite everything, to care about them. When it was over, when the flames had reduced everything to ash and smoke, Victoria approached me. "Your Majesty," she said, the title now mine alone, "the kingdom awaits your first address." I took a shaking breath, stepped forward to the platform where thousands could see me. A blonde woman who couldn't shift, who'd been invisible her entire life, now standing where kings had stood for centuries. "King Ronan gave his life to this kingdom," I began, my voice carrying across the assembled crowd, "not just in dying, but in living. Every decision, every sacrifice, every moment of his reign was spent trying to protect you, to give you stability and peace." I paused, meeting eyes in the crowd. He chose me as his successor not because I'm strong or powerful or qualified by traditional standards. He chose me because he believed the kingdom needed someone who understands what it's like to be powerless, someone who remembers what it costs when leadership fails the vulnerable. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. "I can't promise to be the ruler you expect. I can't promise I won't make mistakes or face challenges I'm unprepared for. But I can promise this. I will never stop trying. I will never stop caring, and I will honor Ronan's legacy by serving you with everything I have." The silence that followed was deafening. Then, from somewhere in the crowd, someone began to clap, then another, then more, until applause rolled across the gathering like thunder. Not everyone joined. Blackthorn and his supporters stood stone-faced. Micah looked furious, but enough people clapped, enough ordinary citizens who'd lived invisible lives like mine, that it felt like possibility. The first year was brutal. Blackthorn challenged my authority 3 times, forcing political confrontations that tested every lesson Ronan had taught me. I opened his letters, followed his guidance, and somehow survived each challenge. The council remained divided, but Victoria became my anchor, teaching me the subtle art of political maneuvering. Marcus grudgingly offered military counsel. Even Cassandra, though never friendly, stopped actively working against me. I implemented small changes, improved conditions for servants, fair trade agreements, protections for those born without wolves. Nothing revolutionary, but steady progress that built trust among those who'd never had a voice. And slowly, so slowly I almost didn't notice, I stopped feeling like an imposter, stopped apologizing for existing. The crown that should have crushed me became something I could carry. 2 years after Ronan's death, I stood in the council chamber facing a new crisis, border disputes with a neighboring kingdom. The elders argued, voices overlapping, until I raised my hand. They fell silent immediately. "Enough," I said quietly. "Here's what we're going to do." I outlined the strategy, part Ronan's teaching, part my own understanding, part pure instinct born from learning to read people who'd overlooked me my entire life. When I finished, Victoria smiled. "An elegant solution, Your Majesty." Even Micah, who'd never stopped resenting me, nodded grudgingly. "It might work." After the meeting, I returned to the royal chambers and opened the last of Ronan's letters. The one marked, "When you finally believe you can do this." Inside was a single line in his familiar handwriting. "I always knew you could. I just needed you to know it too. You were never invisible, Elena. You were always exactly what the kingdom needed. Be well, my queen. Be happy. And know that loving you, even briefly, was the greatest honor of my life." I pressed the letter to my chest, tears streaming down my face, not from grief this time, but from gratitude. For being seen, for being trusted, for being given the chance to become more than I'd ever imagined. Outside my window, the city sparkled with evening lights, families gathering, lives being lived, a kingdom held together not by fear or power, but by the quiet determination of a woman who'd learned that strength came in forms most people never recognized. I touched the ring still on my finger. Ronan's mother's ring, now mine. "Thank you," I whispered to the man who'd changed everything. "For seeing me, for believing in me, for giving me the chance to matter." The kingdom stretched before me, vast and complicated and mine to protect. And for the first time since that impossible proposal in the dying light, I believed I actually could. Not because I was strong, but because I'd learned that sometimes the greatest power came from refusing to let invisibility win, from showing up when running would be easier, from choosing compassion over cruelty, courage over safety. My father had been right all along, and so had the king who'd loved me just long enough to teach me how to love myself. The stars emerged overhead, the same stars that had watched me make an impossible choice. I smiled at them, no longer afraid. The invisible girl was gone, the queen remained, and the kingdom, bruised but healing, imperfect but trying, stretched toward a future neither broken nor burning, just growing, together, finally whole.